So there's this idea that just won't leave me for years now, actually. And it has to do with persisting and structuring skills and knowledge in a semantically linked manner so that it's easy and fun to query, easy and fun to extend, and thus becomes actionable so we can actually do something with it. And speaking of doing something with it, I didn't do a whole lot with this idea, and I decided to change that today. Or in other words, less blah blah, more do. I will take the following thing as an example because I really I need to talk about this idea of mine. Basically, first and foremost for myself, really, because there's still lots of missing pieces, and I need to explain it basically to myself. And maybe there are other people out there that also find this idea interesting and, I don't know, like to watch the videos or even help build this thing. And the example I chose today is actually linking Quarto, which is a really cool notebooking framework, or notebook framework. It's kind of like notebooks on steroids, with Docker. And I do that by introducing the new category in my new channel here. And this is called TIL, not the channel, but the category. And TIL stands for Today I Learned, because this is actually something that I learned today of how to link those two. And kind of the overarching thing, and it's also the name of this idea, is telling you a little bit about KaosMaps, what it is, what I mean by that, where I want to go with it, and hopefully this makes sense to you, and hopefully you find it interesting. And this again is kind of like a segue of talking a bit more on a meta level about this idea of mine, which I decided to name KaosMaps. I will tell you a little bit about what I mean by that and where I want to take it. And I hope that you find it interesting enough to join me, either by watching the future videos in this channel or by actually jumping on board and going on this ride together, because I think it's going to be a fun ride. So, moin moin, as we tend to say in Hamburg, Germany. My name is Janko. And yeah, as I said, today I just wanted to get going. Less blah blah, more do. This is kind of like a really weird life motto, if that's a thing in English. And since I learned something today, which is basically the case almost every day, if it's a good day, I decided to take this very thing that I learned today, which has to do with Quarto and Docker, and actually structure it a little bit and record a video about it so that people might get an idea of what I want to do with KaosMaps. And this is probably going to be a little rough, so I didn't script this at all. It's gonna involve some live coding, so that always works out great. But yeah, with my profound editing skills, I might be able to actually edit some of my fuck ups out. Having said fuck ups, I just decided here on the spot that I'm probably going to swear on my channel. Sorry. All right, let's get into it. So let's jump right in. So first of all, what's Quarto? I'm not an expert, or I didn't prepare like the full list of explaining each of the components that I will talk about today. But suffice it to say, hopefully, that I hope the Quarto guys over at RStudio or Posit won't butcher me for this. I think when I think of Quarto, I think it's notebooks on steroids. And what I mean by that is you have this option to create, based off one document that contains source code, you're able to produce multiple output documents. So it's kind of like, this is what's listed here. So it's kind of like single source of truth for the actual content, then you hit the button, and then you can render it out in a PDF file or in an HTML file or in a dynamic document or whatsoever. And the really cool part about this is not, I come from the R world. I will, like, throughout the videos, I will talk a little bit about my background and what I do. And the cool thing is R is usually like kind of like the weird kid on the block. And the cool thing is that this is a language agnostic framework for creating notebooks, which means you can write Python code instead of R code. You can write Julia code. I don't even know what observable is. And the cool thing is you can actually mix them. So you can mix Python, R, and Julia code. And probably in the future, there's even going to be more languages that are supported. And on the website, Quarto.org, you kind of see a small example for how this looks like in Python. So on the left side, it's the source code. And on the right side, it's the rendered document. And this example here on the right-hand side is actually an HTML page, or HTML page. But it, as I said, it could also be a PDF, it could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint document, many documents, document types or output types. And so this is how it would look like in R, and this is how it would look like in Julia, right? And I wanted to check out to see how I can actually host a Quarto document on a server. I actually wanted to try this with Heroku, but you can think of basically if you figured out how to deploy it to Heroku in a streamlined manner, you can, or in a DevOpsy manner, you can probably also push it to Google Cloud or AWS and whatsoever. And the key component for being able to do that, in my opinion, at least the one that proved to be good for me and for my R-based stuff, because it takes a lot of the deployment pain away, is to use Docker for deployment. So to containerize your application, whatever that may be, a static file or an actual complex web application, doesn't matter. And this is what I actually wanted to try out. So what I did is I Googled and tried in order to find out if there's someone out there that has already done this. And so as a disclaimer, all of the stuff that I'm showing you today, I did not invent this. This comes from Analythium. I hope I pronounced the name right of the company. And yeah, so go check them out. Actually, this is the GitHub page. Analythium.com. Let's try this. No. Analythium Solutions. Analytics that click. I don't know you, Analythium, so sorry about that, but I really applaud you for creating and putting up the blog posts, the 2 blog posts that you published on how to do this, on how to link Quarto with Docker. And this is basically what I just wanted to show you really quick. Not the entire thing, but just one part of taking a static Quarto document and putting that into a Docker container. For that, I'm going to switch over to my Visual Studio Code. And let's open up a static Quarto document, Quarto file. This is how this looks like. If you're familiar a bit with notebooks in the R world or R Markdown, this might look really familiar to you because it basically is R Markdown on steroids, or like the next evolution of Markdown. If I render this out on the right-hand side, you can see that this code on the left-hand side turned into a nice little HTML page. And that's basically our example Quarto document. And now I wondered how to, well, I will show you because I don't have to wander much longer because Analythium actually led the way here. So the first thing we do is to take a Docker file that I, for the sake of simplicity, just copied from Analythium. maybe in a future video I will like talk you through how this Dockerfile is actually set up. It basically just serves as a base image that has Quarto like on board or installed. That's all we're doing here. We built this out by this command here. And funny enough, I tried the code that was on the website on the GitHub page, and you can see it calls Docker build in order to build the image. Since I'm running on an M1 Mac that I bought like last year, and when the M1 MacBook Pros came out, I need to jump through some additional hoops. And this is actually going to be probably this was a rough path to figure out how to get this going on M1 Macs or MacBook Pros. This is probably going to be another video, but for here, for now, it's enough to, or the takeaway is to say, or not the takeaway, but the now I lost my train of thought. It's getting late. So yeah, this will be on another video. For us here, or just should you be on an M1 Mac, this is the code that you actually need to run. Let me fire up a new console here, and since I like to put my Docker commands in a shell script, a little shell script, in order not to having to type them out all of the time, I'm just calling this shell script now. So it's sh docker build sh, and it's building our base image. Since I did that before, it usually takes a little bit longer if you actually build the image. Since I built it out before, Docker caches stuff, as you might know, so this is already done. The next thing is that we take another, or craft another Docker file that actually serves our little index.qmd file in a like tiny web server, basically. Now, I'm not an expert on web servers, but as I understood from the blog post that you can find when you go to the GitHub page of Analythium, it's basically OF, is it OF Watchdog? Yeah, OF Watchdog basically is one really tiny web server that you can use, and it's wrapped within an Alpine image. An Alpine being a really lightweight Linux distribution. Right. So also, again, I'm not going to talk through or talk about all the individual steps in this Docker file. This might come in a second video or in an additional video. If you're interested in that, actually tell me in the comments so I kind of know what you're interested in and what the next video might be. So we have our second Docker file, and in order to build this, there's yet another shell script that contains the actual commands for the Docker command line interface. And so we're just calling this static file sh. It should also be really fast because I did this before and it should cache stuff. So we're now at step 5 of 6. And once we are done with this, we can actually fire up or run a container based off the image that we are just creating. Right, so this, as I said, live coding. So I expected this to go a bit faster due to caching. But since we're, or in the meantime, I wonder if I should jump to, no, okay, we're done. So I won't jump to the Miro board. This will come in a second. All right, so now we have our Docker image. We can actually list out our images, and I tag this KaosMaps, Quarto, static, blah, blah, blah. So it should be here somewhere. It's here. KaosMaps, Quarto, and static file is the tag that I actually specified. And I shamelessly copied this once more from an Analythium. So I just, the only thing I did is to swap Analythium with KaosMaps. I hope you're okay with this Analythium. Again, thanks a lot for, like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here, right? All right, so we have our image, and the next thing we do is to actually run a container that is spun up or spawned. I don't know how you actually say this in the correct way. So you have an image, and you start a container based on this image. As you might know, one image can start like an arbitrary number of containers. That's the new microservice world. If you're familiar with Kubernetes and stuff like that, that's no news to you. I'm getting off topic here. So what I want to do is to actually start my Docker container. So this is the command that I need for that. So I'm going back in my, since it lives also, this statement also lives within a shell file. I can run it. Docker run static file. And this will fire up a web server that's listening on port 8080. So I go there to port 8080, localhost, and port 8080, and voila, this is the same document that I manually rendered out in Visual Studio Code with the little detail that changed is that it's not rendered within Visual Studio Code, but it's actually containerized and it's running in the browser. So in an actual use case, this obviously you would not host this locally, but you would host it on Heroku or on AWS, on Azure or Azure or whatever that's called, on GCP or whatever, DigitalOcean, any cloud infrastructure or server of your choice, basically, that is able to run Docker containers. Okay, so this is basically it for the actual demo part. And so we kind of crossed off this part. We crossed off this part of Today I Learned. And now I want to talk a little bit more about this part, the KaosMaps part. Actually, this is a rocket, in case you didn't notice. I'm really good at drawing, as you can see. Yeah, because KaosMaps is finally taking off, and I couldn't be happier about this. Right, so let's get into what KaosMaps actually is. And you will laugh at me, but I'm okay with this, because actually KaosMaps is kind of like a artificial word that has a meaning. And the chaos part actually stands for, so I like the word. I like chaos with a K, because I kind of tend to like chaos in a way. But then it dawned on me that I can actually tweak this with a lot of, if you're willing to follow the tweaking train of thought here, to tweak this into the thing I actually want to build out. And chaos actually stands for knowledge applied outputs skills. Wow. Fuck this up. Chaos actually stands for knowledge applied outputs skills. Like, so obvious, right? No, I actually started out with knowledge and or skills, or knowledge and other stuff. Actually, I think that was the first one. So knowledge and other stuff. Then I thought, but it's skills that I really want to deal with. And then I said, okay, then knowledge and or skills. And then one day, like a couple of weeks ago, it dawned on me that I can actually turn it into knowledge applied outputs skills. And even though if this is kind of like a forced meaning, I get that, fully aware of that, it actually is the core of what my idea is all about. because I think there's so much knowledge out there, and which is important, and you always need to know where to find knowledge, right? You need to find you need to have your Google skills. You need to look stuff up, be able to look stuff up on Stack Overflow, actually finding your way around in the knowledge space. So that being said, maybe as a bit of background, I'm like a full stack data scientist in a way, or I love to work with data, analyze it, visualize it. I also love to code. So this is kind of like my usual habitat, if that's a thing, in like my ballpark, you could say, right? So, and that's why knowledge is good, but it's usually not enough, because what you actually need to have or to find or to develop in order to solve your programming task or data analysis task or problem or challenge is to have the skills, like have really concrete skills of knowing, how do I get my data visualization out in a PNG format so I can put it in a PowerPoint presentation and actually send it via email, to come up with a really silly example here. So chaos, knowledge, applied, outputs, skills. And the mapping part is, and this is where this ominous graphy thing here comes into play. I want to lay this information, like this knowledge and skills, I want to lay this out in a map format, or to use the map as a mental concept. Because a map is something that's really useful for me. For example, Google Maps is one of my favorite apps. It solves so many problems because it just tells me where to go. And this is where I want to go with knowledge and skills. I want to put this in sort of a knowledge graph, to use that term. I know this is a really bloated and hype word or buzzword to use. That's why I'm not actually using it, but I'm using maps, because I figured maps is something that everyone can kind of relate to, right? And I will talk a bit that this is like the first really fucked up elevator pitch for KaosMaps. I'm fully aware of that. As I said, I didn't script this, so I still need to work on my elevator pitch, but I hope you at least got the general idea. And how to make this tangible and hopefully tangible, and link it back to the example that I just showed you with Quarto and Docker. This is like the most basic, pragmatic, and completely a work in progress kind of layout of what we talked about, or what I talked about today. So we actually started out with Quarto in the middle, or being the centerpiece here. And you can see I like colors, so if you couldn't tell by now. And I like to visualize things. So I'm a really visual type of guy. So that's why I usually work with lines and boxes and arrows from one box to another. And you can see an example of this right here. So what I did here is in Miro, you can link, you can actually basically place anything into Miro, like a URL, and it renders out like a stub or like a preview of the website. And so you can actually click on this to get to quarto.org, right? So Quarto is kind of like a notebooks on steroids. I put this little example of having the source code on the left and the rendered document on the right. Then I linked a RStudio or a talk about Quarto from RStudio Conf, which I can highly recommend. Within that talk, funny enough, Tom Mock mentioned Jeremy Howard, who you might be familiar with if you are from the data science, machine learning kind of space, or if you work in that field, you definitely know him. But others might also know him. And he developed something really, really cool that's called NBDev. And if I zoom out a little bit, and this is kind of like, I hope you can see a bit the mapping part here, or at least the linking part of information, and maybe I should say information and skills and not knowledge and skills. I'm just, but no, then the chaos would break down. Can't do that. So this is kind of like how my head works, or my brain works, and I think I'm not that different from any or from other people out there, right? So whenever I actually watched this, like the first couple of minutes of this video, and as soon as I heard Jeremy Howard in NBDev, I thought fast.ai. If you're familiar or not familiar with fast.ai or Jeremy Howard, he actually founded, I think, or at least co-founded fast.ai, which is basically, they're doing lots of cool stuff, but one of the things they're doing is to put out courses on machine learning and deep learning. And their claim is just, that's one of the coolest claims out there. They set out to say, or to make neural nets uncool again, right? So they're focusing on the essence and try to leave all the hype bullshit like to other people, to the Gartner hype cycle, or whoever wants to hype neural nets. I feel like this has long been gone. So we kind of had the second peak of wow, deep learning and machine learning, it will conquer the world. It's AI. I think we're not there yet, but I just love this claim of making neural nets uncool again. So yeah, so then my brain said, okay, I wanna link to this, and then there's Jeremy Howard, and Jeremy Howard obviously can be found on the internet, on LinkedIn, or on Twitter, or Mastodon, as Twitter has kind of is living a really interesting period, if you know what I mean. With if you watch tech news at all during the last couple of weeks, you know what's going on over at Twitter. Right, so that's like the fast AI branch. So knowledge kind of and skills branch off. So there's no skill in there yet, obviously. So this is where my Pragmatic done in 5 minutes, created in 5 minutes version of what KaosMaps could be actually breaks down, because there are no skills yet. But a bit closer, at least, is the link from Quarto to this kind of knowledge area. So you can think of this like cities on a map. If we take this metaphor of a map again. So Quarto is a city, and from Quarto, there's kind of like a nearby city called Fast AI, and there's a city that's a bit further away, maybe, but it's also kind of linked in a way. That's called Docker. So Docker Village or Docker City. And then there's links between, like there's roads and like nodes, if you want to think in knowledge graph terms. Now I said it again. Or if you think of it in terms of a brain, there's like connections between brain cells. This is where I want to go with this image, at least with this metaphor. I know it's totally not sophisticated enough to actually get the idea across like in a couple of minutes, but I hope you kind of catch my drift here. So yeah, Quarto, linking Quarto and Docker, that's basically where I link to Analythium and their blog posts and awesome GitHub repo. And then while I was scanning the internet and looking at different blog posts, I actually found a completely new thing that I wasn't aware of, that is linking Docker and WASM, which is short for WebAssembly. And this is apparently a really new thing. And my brain immediately said, okay, dump this in Docker City, because that's where it belongs. It might have connections, so there's no connection yet for anything we talked about today. But there might be a future connection, maybe to another city or to something else within Docker City, and so on. So yeah, I hope this kind of gets the idea across. I'm fully aware, as I said, that this might be completely, I might have lost you like 10 minutes ago, and I have to live with this, but I just didn't want to wait anymore. I wanted to do less blah blah, more doo-doo. Obviously, I'm still doing blah blah since I'm talking to you, but it still feels like doing something, right? And obviously the knowledge and the skills that I wanna oh, this is a perfect segue back over to the code. The knowledge and skills should not live in Miro. This is just like a segue. I probably will use Miro and Notion as a pragmatic way of like creating little bits and pieces of information, knowledge, and skills. But eventually they will be managed probably via some form of graph database, right? This is where I want to go with this on the back end side. Obviously not having that live in Miro for the entirety. That's not KaosMaps. It's just to get the idea across, right? And one concrete step, and that's probably going to be the last thing I do in this video, is to actually push this code, which is like completely, it's nothing fancy, and it all comes again from Analythium, to actually push this out to commit this to a GitHub repo that I will share with the world. I created a GitHub organization which is, surprise, surprise, called KaosMaps. And I just invite everyone out there to like use the code, extend the code, maybe get in touch with me so we can maybe build this thing out together if you're interested. So actually completely, oh, this is double negative. I did prepare a bit, but I still need to do a couple of things in order to being able to push this thing. So Quartainer, that's my really fancy name and creative name for linking Quarto and container. Quartainer, because Quarto Docker or Quartocker just didn't sound that good. So I thought Quartainer is kind of cool. So now I need to find the remote part. Yeah, it's actually do this. So do I have a remote yet? No. So let's try this. Where did I go wrong? Okay. I forgot to create the GitHub repo. Really well prepared, Janko. Sorry about that. I have my little cheat sheet here. Git status. Let's make this a bit bigger actually, so I can see better. Let's just do a little quick and dirty git add all and git commit git push set upstream origin main. Perfect, that worked. And now we have the code on this repo, which is again KaosMaps/Quartainer. I don't have a nice README yet, but I will probably do this tomorrow to have a nicer, like a typical GitHub, like a README that works on GitHub and is rendered properly like you would expect. The things I showed you today actually live in the Quarto document lives in the folder static file, so you can check that out. And the Docker files are found in the root directory of our little code project here. It's actually an R package, which I also probably will talk a lot about and do a couple, or at least do a couple of videos about this on how to create R packages. And also containerize R applications. So that's the Docker files, and then you have the shell scripts that contain the Docker code that you need to build an image and to run containers of an image. And that's basically it. I made it through the first video in KaosMaps. It's probably a lot longer than I would have thought. I probably need to edit lots of stuff. So please forgive me if there are like really jumpy cuts in the final video. So I hope that you enjoyed the content of this very first video in the KaosMaps channel. If you found it interesting, I would be thrilled if you could give it a thumbs up to let also let the YouTube algorithm know that there's a new channel in town. So hi, YouTube algorithm, please see me. If you found it interesting enough that you could picture yourself watching yet another video or future videos of myself building out and doing this thing, I would be even more amazed and thrilled, because I really want to build this thing out in the open. And the community part, if I go back to the Miro thing here, you can see that my first video, so that obviously the links are going to be in the show notes, so in the description. And I put this deliberately in the folder community, because community means a lot to me. I love the open source community. Actually, I forgot to talk about one really important part of my journey, and that's RStudio. So obviously, Quarto, not obviously, but Quarto was invented by RStudio, which is in the middle of rebranding it themselves to Posit. So that's the new name. And I would just like to kind of dedicate this very first video to RStudio and Posit, because without you guys, I wouldn't be doing the stuff that I do programming wise or data science wise in my job or for fun. So a huge shout out to RStudio. And yeah, basically RStudio, or with R and RStudio, I got my feet wet in the open source community, and I just loved this, right? And I would love to build KaosMaps, whatever that may mean in the end. I'm not sure yet myself, together with a community. So I will go to great lengths to kind of make it as easy as possible to get in touch with me, or to actually contribute, or to exchange thoughts. And I would be thrilled if other people actually understand this idea of where I want to go, and actually can picture themselves contributing content themselves to this thing that KaosMaps eventually will be. So I'm pretty sure that it will eventually be something. I just don't know how long it takes and what concrete form it will eventually have. But yeah, I just have this dream. It won't leave again, or it won't leave anymore. So I decided to act on it. And if you want to know more see and know more about KaosMaps, then stay tuned for the next video. See you there. Oh, no, I actually saved that. Oh, I almost forgot. I had a very special ending planned, and it's completely silly, but I'm going to do it anyway. And by the way, this is completely not recorded after the fact. It's right after I paused the recording. Okay, it's recorded after the fact. But yeah, I have to do it. So if you thought that KaosMaps was already silly, you're gonna be blown away by the level of silliness that's about to come. Picture this. So we're developing or creating KaosMap after KaosMap, which are, as I try to explain, you can picture them as being maps of where individual cities of information, knowledge, and or skills are linked with other cities by something like roads, like semantically linked. You can drive from one city to another city, depending on the task at hand or the route you want to choose. And then you can also jump from KaosMap to KaosMap. And by doing so, you'll eventually build out the, wait for it, Chaosverse. Mind-blowing, isn't it? Obviously not totally serious here, but I just thought I need to go out on a limb here and make a fool out of myself. And actually, that's not the end of it, right? So because I thought, hey, I need a signature move of ending my videos. You know, like everyone's doing like catch you in the next one, or MKBHD is putting his hand on the camera, flashy style. So I thought I also need a signature move right from the get-go. So get ready for my signature move. So I catch you in the chaos verse. Got it? The chaos verse. The K and the V. What a signature move!